Hey everyone, welcome to The Explainer. Today, we're diving straight into a medical mystery, and honestly, it's a gripping one. It's quietly, but very rapidly affecting millennials and Gen Z. We're talking about a profound, frankly terrifying shift in human health that scientists are urgently scrambling to figure out. Okay, let's dive right into this. Just think about Fiona. She's a 40-year-old mom of 3 who's facing liver cancer, and she asks a question that really sits at the absolute heart of our explainer today. I don't smoke, I don't drink, I wasn't obese. Why me? You see, we're looking at this shocking anomaly worldwide. Fundamentally healthy, young people are suddenly getting cancer at rates we have literally never seen before.
And the data backing up Fiona's why me, it's completely staggering. 173% increase. That is the massive spike in bowel cancer rates among 30 to 39-year-olds just since the year 2000. And what's really wild, and definitely alarming for us here, is that researchers are pointing out Australia actually leads the world in this early onset trend.
But it's not just bowel cancer, right? Since the year 2000, prostate cancer in that exact same 30 to 39 age bracket has absolutely skyrocketed by 500%. Pancreatic cancer, up 200%, and liver cancer, like what Fiona has, is up 150%. Now, to be fair, cancer experts always jump in to remind us that the absolute number of cases in young people is still relatively small compared to, say, our grandparents. But it's these rapid-fire, massive percentage spikes that have the medical community on high alert.
The human stakes behind the statistics. The data gives us the what, but we really need to focus on the human stories here, the actual people living through this terrifying generational shift.
Let's look at 3 patients right at the center of this anomaly. And spoiler alert, 0 typical risk factors. There's Chris, he's 41, a former sprinter. He had to get 70% of his liver removed while he and his wife were right in the middle of navigating IVF for a new baby. We already mentioned Fiona, the 40-year-old non-drinker whose liver tumor actually ruptured. And then there's Patrice, a 45-year-old single mom. She was forced to just keep working through debilitating stage 3 breast cancer treatment simply to make rent. For every single one of them, it's that exact same haunting motif. Why me?
So to figure that out, scientists are looking deep into the tumors themselves. Associate Professor Dan Buchanan says they're actually seeing a highly specific generational DNA damage pattern in these younger tumors. He describes it as a really good fingerprint, proving that something specific happened to cause that change. For researchers, this early-onset cancer is basically acting like a canary in the coal mine. It's flashing red, warning us that something fundamental in our environment has shifted.
Now, what's really interesting here is how scientists track those changes. They use this fascinating concept called the exposome. Think of it as the incredibly complex mix of physical, chemical, psychological, and social exposures throughout a person's entire life that can affect their health. It's the grand total of everything we interact with, and that is exactly where researchers are hunting for our environmental culprits.
But finding those culprits? Well, it's like a massive puzzle across time. See, cancer rarely happens overnight. It has a decades-long latency period, meaning tumors take years, even decades to develop. So the root cause of today's cancers in 40-year-olds, it almost certainly traces all the way back to huge environmental shifts during their childhoods in the 1980s, maybe even while they were in utero.
Investigating the suspects. If the exposure happened decades ago, what exactly changed? Let's get into the primary suspects driving these massive shifts in our modern exposome.
Researchers point to some massive lifestyle shifts that really kicked off in the 80s and 90s, leaving millennials uniquely vulnerable. We saw the start of the childhood obesity epidemic, a big jump in C-sections, and historically high antibiotic use, all things that fundamentally alter a person's gut microbiome. Add in the absolute boom in ultra-processed foods, and researchers are finding that an altered gut can actually allow E. coli bacteria to produce toxins that cause direct DNA damage. The link between this specific gut bacteria and certain bowel mutations isn't just an association anymore. They're finding it's a direct cause.
And then we have the chemical explosion. Pediatrician Dr. Christos Simeon highlights a finding that will honestly blow your mind. Out of the roughly 16,000 chemicals used in modern plastics, which, let's face it, is the absolute signature material of our modern era, only about 1/3 have ever been evaluated for potential hazards. That leaves a massive 67% of them completely 100% untested.
So the crucial point is this absolute, terrifying regulatory blind spot. Of the chemicals that actually have been evaluated, around 75% are flagged as hazardous.
Yet that massive untested majority? They are basically just assumed to be completely safe until someone proves they're harmful. It's a regulatory framework built entirely on this wild assumption of safety, which is crazy when you look at the super high failure rate of the chemicals we actually bother to test.
Researchers are actively tracking specific historical exposures, things like PCBs, which were used as flame retardants, and PFAS. You've probably heard of them as forever chemicals, found in things like nonstick pans. The peak exposure for this generation happened back in the 1970s and 80s, and the data is painting a very clear picture. For example, PFOA is now reliably linked to kidney cancer and breast cancer. The effects of the chemicals this generation was soaking in decades ago are only just now manifesting as cancer.
Systemic blind spots and financial toxicity. This brings us to the present-day fallout, where our healthcare systems are completely struggling to adapt to this demographic shift.
Take the screening dilemma, for instance. Current public policy usually dictates that bowel screening programs only start at age 45. Why? Well, mainly because modeling says that's what's cost-effective for the broader population. But the grim reality on the ground is that cancer rates are surging in the 30 to 39 age group, meaning they completely miss that screening window. Professor John Emery talks about this concept called safety netting. Basically, it's unfairly putting the onus on your local GP to catch subtle red flags in young patients who don't qualify for national screening. Because right now, their symptoms are way too easily dismissed, simply because they seem too young for cancer.
And when a young person falls through that net, they slam right into a crushing cycle of financial toxicity. It usually starts with hefty out-of-pocket Medicare gaps for specialized scans and psychology. Then it leads to draining their superannuation and early life savings, money meant for starting families. And finally, there's this intense, horrible pressure to just keep working through debilitating chemotherapy. Remember Patrice? The financial strain of paying rent during treatment broke her down so much that she hid from the world. She wouldn't even open her door until her best friend Jim literally forced his way in to help her survive. It's just a devastating burden to put on young adults.
Redefining prevention. So how do we actually fix this? We need a massive shift in our approach to public health moving forward to protect the next generation.
And this brilliantly illustrates the absolute crux of the debate: two entirely different regulatory mindsets. Our current approach for consumer plastics and environmental chemicals is essentially sold until proved dangerous. But experts and scientists are pushing hard for a new proposed approach, not sold until proved safe. It totally flips the script on how we protect public health from environmental toxins.
This proposed mindset is anchored in a really critical public health concept known as the precautionary principle. It's basically the idea that if there's uncertainty and a potential for irreversible harm, we should act right now to mitigate the risk. We shouldn't wait around for conclusive evidence. It means the burden of proof should fall squarely on manufacturers to prove a chemical is safe before it enters our homes, instead of making society wait decades for tragic cancer clusters to pop up and prove it was harmful all along.
Which leaves us with a deeply provocative question that researchers are asking right now. When today's kids are adults in 40 years, will we be looking back asking if we could have done more to prevent cancer in their generation? It's a powerful, honestly, sobering thought to leave you with. I really hope this sparks your curiosity to explore more about your own exposome and the policies shaping the world around us. Thanks so much for hanging out and learning with me today on The Explainer.